It's a shot across the bow in the Canada-U.S. trade war. A massive Canadian production plant is moving south. I'm Ben Mulrooney. The West Block starts right now. A major car manufacturer is moving from Canada to America as Ottawa scrambles to stop the bleeding. Is the move playing right into Donald Trump's hands? We speak with one of his former trade experts. Plus, Canadian snipers are known as the best in the world. Now, for the first time, their experiences are in print. We speak with a former sniper on his latest accomplishment. The heated Canada-U.S. trade war shows no signs of cooling down. Prime Minister Mark Carney has had his trade minister in D.C. constantly for talks. Donald Trump hasn't stopped lobbing tariffs at Canada, and the provinces are now divided on their angles of attack. Ontario is taking the tact of targeting Washington using one of their own.
The way to prosperity for all nations is rejecting protectionist legislation and promoting fair and free competition. America's jobs and growth are at stake.
This after the province was dealt a huge blow to its car manufacturing sector.
We don't need their cars.
Donald Trump has been clear. He wants Canada out of the car manufacturing business.
They make 20% of our cars. We don't need that. I'd rather make them in Detroit.
It looks as though his wishes are coming true as the U.S.-Canada trade war has now claimed a major casualty. Global car-making giant Stellantis is investing $13 billion in America and shifting manufacturing of the Jeep Compass from Ontario to Illinois.
We will make sure that we push the company and we hold them to account.
Ottawa has promised they won't take this lying down. The Prime Minister stated, "We have further made clear that we expect Stellantis to fulfill the undertakings they have made to the workers of Brampton." Ottawa has not yet clarified what action it will take, but in a letter obtained by Global News, Industry Minister Mélanie Joly says the government will, quote, exercise all options, including legal.
The company has commitments under different types of agreements with the government.
The company issued this statement: "Canada is very important to us. We have plans for Brampton and will share them upon further discussions with the Canadian government." The federal government says Stellantis has a legally binding commitment to stay in Brampton, Ontario, after joining an auto pact promising billions of dollars in incentives.
Our job is to defend Canadian workers and Canadian businesses.
High-level talks continue in Washington, where Carney's trade minister has been working almost daily since the Prime Minister's Oval Office visit.
Recognizing the urgency, so we don't diminish for a minute the urgency for businesses, workers to see progress.
The stakes are high for both sides. The Canadian Chamber of Commerce keeps a live running tab of cross-border commerce since January 1st. Billions of dollars every single year. We're joined now by Kellyanne Shaw, trade expert and former senior White House trade advisor in Donald Trump's first term. Welcome to the West Block, Kellyanne.
Thanks so much for having me.
All right, vehicle manufacturer Stellantis is moving south. A very big deal up here, especially in the province of Ontario, after Donald Trump made repeated and several times that he wanted vehicle manufacturing done in the U.S. Now, you were in the White House during the president's first term. How do you think he's viewing this move by a major car company?
Well, I think this is definitely welcome news from the perspective of the administration. The president has talked very explicitly, including just the other week with Prime Minister Carney, about the fact that when it comes to the automotive industry, the United States wants more manufacturing in the United States, and Canada wants more manufacturing in Canada, and that these are just two different positions from companies that are competing for business. So I certainly think this is welcome news. This is exactly what the president had hoped would happen with some of his tariffs and other incentives. And this is exactly how this is playing out.
Now, you've seen Donald Trump negotiate in the past. Talk to me about his negotiation style, especially as it relates to trade.
Yeah, and I had the opportunity to watch the president negotiate up close in a number of instances. And I think he's actually quite transparent about his negotiating style. You're seeing this where he is not afraid to take the big swings. He is not afraid to use threats. He's not afraid to use strong incentives, right? There's both a carrot and a stick approach happening here. But I think at the end of the day, he is a deal maker and he understands that for a deal to work out, there has to be something in it for both parties. But a good deal is one that makes both parties better off. So at the end of the day, in terms of negotiating between the United States and Canada, I certainly expect that whatever landing zone we ultimately do arrive at will be a better arrangement than the one that we started with.
Well, let's look to the other side of the negotiating table. Prime Minister Carney has publicly ruled out counter tariffs against the U.S. Meanwhile, his trade minister has been in Washington for talks most days since the Prime Minister's Oval Office visit. In your view, is this a good tactic?
Yeah, I think it is a marked improvement. You've actually heard even this week, the U.S. Trade Representative, Ambassador Greer, was asked about how negotiations were going with Canada, and he said that they were going well and that the mood had improved significantly. And that came from the top, from Prime Minister Carney's interaction directly with the president. What I have seen, I've tried countries try all types of tactics with this president. And the ones that are the most successful at getting a deal and de escalating tensions are the ones that meet him with more of a workman-like mentality. And that is, where is the president substantively? Let's just get on with it. Let's get a deal on the table. Let's do away with some of this atmospherics, these threats and counter threats, and really just get down to brass tacks. And I think that's what the Canadian negotiators are doing right now. And that's why you're seeing such a warm reception on the U.S. side.
Talk to me about what a win could possibly look like for Canada when we have on the other side of the negotiating table somebody who says that tariffs are they're the cat's meow, and so in Donald Trump's world, tariffs are here to stay. But on the Canadian side of the table, we're hoping to get rid of all tariffs across the board. So what do you think a victory looks like for us?
Yeah, well, it's certainly a priority of the president, but it's not just him. There is overall much more receptivity among the American electorate for tariffs. But that said, certainly there are a number of shared efficiencies that can be gained between the United States and Canada to see some of those tariff rates come down. We already have that CUSMA and USMCA carve out for a large portion of trade. But even on some of these sectoral tariffs like steel and aluminum, we could see further tariff reductions. I think what the U.S. is going to require, though, are assurances that no other country is getting the benefit of that bargain, meaning we're not going to see Chinese steel, Chinese aluminum coming in to the United States under a Canadian quota or some sort of U.S.-Canada arrangement, and that we might see those requests going beyond that, just like we saw with Mexico, where Mexico is now raising its tariffs on imports from China and other countries as a way to secure this North American supply chain. So I can certainly see a landing zone where North America as a whole is better off, but it will make it more difficult for other countries' goods to get the benefit of that bargain.
Kellyanne, a new poll shows 2/3 of Canadians say a new Canada-U.S. trade deal is crucial to jobs and the economy here. How likely do you think this is going to get done before next year's review of the former NAFTA?
So I've always been of the view that this is a relationship that both sides want to preserve and that there will be some way forward here. Now, I think, again, you're hearing very positive signals from the U.S. administration. There are some outstanding issues. Ambassador Greer mentioned trade and services and agriculture as two of the sticking points. Certainly, any negotiations around a steel and aluminum arrangement are going to be very difficult, as well as automotive. But we do so much trade with one another. We have the world's largest contiguous border. I think this is a relationship that's going to land, and I am optimistic it will hopefully land by the end of the year. And then we'll enter into the USMCA or CUSMA review process, which will be that trilateral negotiation.
Well, I'm glad you said trilateral, because in the case of the former NAFTA, it does take three to tango. But you've got the Mexican economy minister who's saying that these negotiations will be bilateral. And during Trump's first term, he suggested that NAFTA at the time could be replaced by unilateral deals. So what do you think the future is for this continental trade deal?
Well, I don't think the future is certain in terms of what happens to the USMCA arrangement. Now, that said, we are negotiating bilaterally right now. The United States is negotiating a package with Canada, and they are separately negotiating a package with Mexico. So those are the two bilateral negotiations that are happening. This review process is not likely to kick off in earnest until the beginning of 2026. And so that will deal with some of the outstanding issues. And for some some of the provisions in USMCA, they really are trilateral in nature. And so it makes sense to address them with the three countries together. But when it comes to these major trade barriers, these big concessions, most of those are going to take place on a bilateral basis anyway. So I certainly think we'll have bilateral deals between the United States and Canada and the United States and Mexico. The real question mark for me is, what does USMCA look like after that? Will it stay intact? Will it be preserved? I think there's a chance that yes, it will be, but right now all the play is in these bilateral negotiations, and I think that's why they're taking so long.
For as many countries as there are in the world, that's how many different approaches there are to negotiating with Donald Trump. In your estimation and your expertise, is there one country that has done it better than anyone else?
Well, I certainly think a number of countries have done well in terms of the way they've engaged with the president. I would point to the United Kingdom as one example, who managed to ink the very first deal with the president. And there is certainly a first mover advantage when it comes to this White House, where those who come to the table, who are willing to take some of those hard steps, usually get the best deal at the end of the day. And so when I've seen leaders come forward and again approach the president with more of a workman-like approach, not sort of get bogged down in rhetoric or bogged down in playing political games, but really trying to get to the brass tacks of the substance of what the United States concerns are, they tend to fare better and in exchange have most of their concerns addressed as well. So again, any deal that's good is one that's good and better off for both countries. Otherwise, they wouldn't make that deal. But I do think, again, first mover advantage and then addressing the president substantively.
Kellyanne, thank you very much.
Great. Really appreciate it.